Activating Success with Love Idoko.
Welcome to a new and inspiring episode of Activating Success. Today is a great day. Get excited about your life. It is possible to be whoever you want to be. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter who has talked you down. It is possible to be whoever you want to be. Don't go away. Stay right there. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Activating Success with Love Idoko.
Welcome back. Today we're glad to have someone who is a survivor of domestic violence and abuse. She'll be sharing her incredible story. Today we're glad to have Pastor Susan Olofu. Welcome to Activating Success.
Thank you for having me.
We're so glad to have you today.
Yes, it's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, so you have a very touching story. You survived abuse and domestic violence. Tell us about it.
Oh, thank you very much. Each time I have the opportunity to talk about that experience, it's always very exciting for me because I believe that when I tell my story, I'm also telling the story of a lot of other people who may not be bold or courageous enough to come and tell it. So while it just started a few years or many years back, as a young girl with the hopes of, getting married and, having that forever after, a fantasy of a home. And it was in a very vulnerable state of my life. I had lost a loved one, a dear one, and, there was a vacuum that had been created. And this young man came along. He was a pastor. He had charisma. He looked gentle. He looked like someone who ticked all the boxes. So it was easy for me to just, just fall.
Yeah, this is God's thing.
Exactly. So, but little did I know that this was someone I can now call a wolf in sheep clothing. Yes. In the beginning, he was nice and all that. I couldn't tell that this person was not real. Friends and family could see from the outside, and they could once in a while talk to me and express their concerns. But because I was already invested in this person, it was difficult for me to hear or to understand what they're trying to tell me. So I kept forging along. At the end of the day, I didn't realize when I was isolated from everybody, everything was happening so fast. And finally, I was so roped in that it was difficult for me to go back. Like, I didn't want to go back and tell everyone, like, okay, this is it. That shame and that feeling of not wanting to be told, but we told you, So it was like, this is your cross, take it. Well, you can make him change, and all those excuses that a lot of victims of abuse give. And to my dismay, he was getting worse by the day. The situation became so terrible that I could have lost my life.
Wow.
Yes. And then, but by the mercies of God, I was able to escape a very intriguing story that I had to just put in a book because it's too broad and all that. So right now, I am here today. It's a very long journey.
Let me take you back.
All right.
Before you got married to this person, did you have a relationship? Like, did you court for some years or?
Yes, of course. We did court for a period of about 2 years.
Wow.
But
and did he show these signs?
The signs didn't come immediately, but after a while, the mask began to fall off. Once in a while, I could see the anger tantrums. I could see the yelling. I could see the little lies here and there and all that. But all the while, I kept making excuses for him. I kept fixating my mind on the first person that I met, and I'll keep giving excuses and reasons for why he was beginning to act the way he was acting, and then basically for me, it was all coming from a place of pity for this person because of his background. He shared a lot about his background for me, and that I had this feeling of, my God, this person needs a lot of help. This person has been through a lot. I think he needs me. Let me try and fix him, and that was my greatest mistake. Yes, that outlook of abusers, by the way, is the trap that's set for their victims. They always come looking charming and all that. That's for some of them anyway. Looking charming and all that, and at the same time, they begin to present to you a part of them that feels needy, and because of your good nature, especially for women, because of their good nature and that nurturing ability in them, wanting to fix things and all that, so you think you can help this person out, and before you know what's happening, you're roped in. So even when you see the signs, you're giving excuses and you don't do anything about it, but before you know what's happening, you'll be swallowed up in it. Yes.
Okay, I remember I read a story on your Facebook page some years ago.
Okay.
I can't really remember everything I read, but I remember you said something like, you're working with communications.
Yes. MTN.
Yes. And then your salary. You didn't even have access to your salary.
In fact,
you couldn't use your own money.
It was a perfect case of monkey the work, baboon the chop. Like, I was the one working, he wasn't working. Of course, being a pastor, he depended on tithes and offerings whenever they came in, a prophet offering, and all that. So I was the one working. I would go to work, morning, noon, or night, depending on, because the demand on us was very much, because we're interfacing with, the customers directly. So, but he had my debit card in his wallet. Like, that was the permanent position of that card. The only thing I was entitled to seeing about that salary were the alerts. Like, I could be working, I could be at work, and then I'll see the credit alert, because of course we work on the internet. But the funny thing is, moments later, I'm sure going to be seeing debit alerts, because it's like he has maybe a timer or I don't know what to call it now, a sensor that makes him know when the credit gets in. Exactly. And then I was entitled to just 3,000 naira from that money, from my own salary. Like, after I left, it took me years to learn how to say my money. Or my this. I couldn't personalize anything. Like, I didn't own anything. So it was safer to say the money, because that way, yes, I'm not laying claim to it. But you can now imagine what may have brought that kind of mind conditioning. Like, why would you, a mature adult, you're working, and then you can't boldly say my money,
because you're used to him spending your money.
It's him, whatever he gives, it's what I have. And from that money, he would dress himself well, do anything he wants to do, sponsor his projects, give money to his family, and exactly.
This reminds me of what Dr. Mike Murdoch said. Mike Murdoch said that whatever you repeatedly hear, you eventually believe.
That is absolutely true. You become what you repeatedly hear.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when he would devalue me with words, saying demeaning things and talking me down and all that, I had this problem of trying to accept what he was saying. I knew I wasn't that person.
Because you kept hearing it.
But I kept hearing it.
Yes.
At a point, I started internalizing it. In fact, I accepted that I was who he was. I started living his version of me. Everything he said that I was were lies, but I accepted that to be the new me. And so that after I left, I was now faced with the compulsory option of reclaiming my life back. Like, I had to start allowing, those terrible nature that I had adopted to begin to fall off, so that the real me can imagine. In fact, it was a real fight. It had been a real fight. But I want to say I have won as it is, because I no longer struggle with knowing who I am and asserting who I am and demanding, for the things that are rightfully mine anywhere I go with whomever. But while I was there, it was not possible.
In case you're watching us right now, don't let any man's opinion of you become your reality.
Absolutely.
You are too loaded to fail. You have what it takes to be whoever you want to become. Don't let a negative relationship or a bad marriage kill your enthusiasm to succeed. You have only one life to live. You must give it your best shot. Don't let the relationship you are into right now or the marriage you are in right now kill your enthusiasm. This is someone who has suffered abuse and domestic violence. You're hearing her story, and I believe you're getting inspired right now. Now, I remember something else you said that I read. You said something about, I think he goes to the mountain to pray or something.
Oh, yes. He was a mountain dweller. He was a John the Baptist of the 21st century.
I remember you said he always goes to the mountain to pray, and then I can't remember what happened. I don't know whether you took food to him or something. I can't remember. But then you went there, and then he chased you or something. I can't remember. And then you're about to cross the road, and a car nearly knocked you down or something. Tell us about that experience.
Actually, that was the day I could have died, because that day he was on the mountain as usual on, I think, a 40 days fast or so, according to him. So I would take fruits and water up the mountain to him. This I did like every 2 days or every other day. And it was very risky, because along the path up that mountain, which by the way takes about 2 hours to get there and back, I would meet wild animals, monkeys, alligators, and all manner. But I would be so exhausted that I'd be wondering. In fact, at the point, I might sit halfway up the mountain and I'm just weeping, like, what am I even doing here? Now, this particular day, a conversation ensued between us. I think that had to do with our kids. I can't really recall right now. And in his usual heated up manner, he picked up a big log of wood to hit me with it. But I think at this point, I was already getting exhausted. Like, I was already getting to the point of, I can't take this anymore. And so I started running down the mountain away from him. I thought he was going to go back, because of course he had been fasting. That day was the 22nd day of that fast. I imagine this man should be weak. But he was coming after me dressed like a jungle pirate. He was just looking so rough and all that. So I kept running, and each time I looked back, he was coming after me. At that point, I became suicidal. Like, I told myself, I will end this thing today. And this was happening in Kubwa, somewhere in Kubwa in Abuja. For those who are in Abuja, the Papa ground along Kubwa Express Road in Abuja. So I decided that I was going to run into the road. The road had not been dualized at the time. So cars were coming and going. It was around the close of work. So I said I was going to run into the road and be run over by a car, so that I can just die and then let everything end. I think if I die, this whole thing would stop. And so that was what I did. I got to the road and I ran through it. But what happened was, I can't really tell what happened, because instead of being hit by a car, I noticed that I was in the firm grip of some men. I was now on the other side of the road. According to them, they saw somebody run across the road, and they thought, in fact, cars had to screech along the road to stop, because everybody was wondering what just happened. So I started looking around, because I was expecting to see myself float out of my body like they say dead people do. I didn't see that happen. Instead, I was hearing voices, "Madam, what are you doing? What is happening?" All that. I looked around and I saw them. Then I looked across the road, and he was still coming. At this time, I didn't want to die again. Like, I started begging the men, "Please, don't let me go with him." They were wondering who I was talking about, and they looked across, they saw him coming. He came, and you won't believe this. He was looking really haggard, but he spoke like the best gentleman in the world. It was like, good evening, sirs. In fact, I was shocked. We have seen cases where even before the court of law, the abusers, the matter is ruled in favor of the abusers because they are masters at control. They can control everybody, including themselves. This is contrary to the belief that everybody have about abusers, that they don't have control. No, they can control themselves. They can control everybody. They know when to react. So that if the law enforcement shows up, they know what to say. They know how to comport themselves.
Just like he did.
Just to make you, yes. So you'll be the one responding to their behavior, and then everybody will see you for the nasty one. They will see you for the hostile one. They do that before your kids, if you have kids. So you see that the victim is always yelling, always having outbursts. They're only responding to the triggers. The abusers know what to say and where to punch to bring out that reaction, and that's what gives them significance. And by the way, abusers, they have a deep sense of insecurity. And it is this deep sense of insecurity that makes them to want to be in control, that makes them to have this, grandiose appearance, that make them arrogant, that make them feel entitled, and all of that is just to gain significance, because they believe that it's by putting someone else down that they can have significance. So they can go all out to unleash the terror on that one person that they have identified. And they don't always have one victim. They may have a primary victim at the time, but all the while they are grooming others. That is why you notice that abusers easily move on. After a breakup, you will notice that the abuser has maybe gotten married, and you'll be wondering, oh my God, am I this bad person? This person has moved on, and it looks like everything is going on well with them. But the thing is, that is their nature. That is their nature. What they need is healing, but they don't always want to go for it.
This is so insightful. In life, we learn from either our own experiences or from someone else's experience. Today, we're learning from an incredible woman who is a survivor, somebody who has survived abuse and domestic violence. This is incredible. Don't go away. Stay right there. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Activating success with Love Idoko.
Welcome back. In case you just tuned in, this is Activating Success with Love Idoko, and we have been speaking with an incredible lady that has survived abuse and domestic violence. Okay, what is the strongest thought on your mind right now? What do you have to say to young women, young people that are watching you right now? Either young women that are single, young women in relationship, and even women that are married. What is the strongest thought on your mind right now?
Okay, well, let me start by saying, I'm making this quote by Charles Swindoll, who says that life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of your reaction to it. Most of us become victims of abuse because we reacted to the situations that life brought to us in a way that made us vulnerable to becoming victims of abuse. So why I say that is because a lot of people watching me today are in situations of life that has brought them to a place of compromise, have brought them to a place where they begin to seek validation and acceptance from the outside world, not knowing that they are supposed to be the ones generating this from within themselves. And because that is missing, that vacuum is there, and every vacuum will be filled up. So that already, places them, as an attraction to abusers. So what I would say is, believe in yourself. Know who you are. I always say this everywhere I go, because knowing who you are is the key to knowing who you are not. Now, if you know who you are, you will be able to decide and determine the kind of treatment you allow from other people.
True.
If you know that you are deserving of good treatment and you see bad treatment coming, you will not, give in to them.
Nobody
exactly.
can put you down.
You have to know your self-worth.
Yes.
You have to know your self-value. You have to build self-confidence. All of this will stem from knowing who you are. Exactly. And then, if they're already in an abusive relationship or an abusive marriage, I'd like to let them know that I know where they are. I know how they feel. I know the point where they are right now. Everybody else may not understand them. Everybody else may not understand their plight, but I understand it. And I want to let them understand that the confusion they're feeling right now, and the fear, and the shame, and the guilt, and the intimidation, and the blame, because some of them blame themselves, is not the real or the correct explanation of who they really are. All of these things have been adopted and picked up by the baggage, or from the baggage that was thrown at them by this abuser. And these are things that they can walk their way through, if only they can just believe in themselves and know who they are. Yes, they don't have to start with plenty money in their bank account. All they need is to be able to look at their lives and then be honest with themselves and decide that this is not where I am supposed to be. What I'm experiencing now is not the experience that I should be experiencing. This is not what I deserve. Then look at the pain, because a lot of people tell them to forgive and forget. I say, no, yes, it's okay to forgive, but don't forget everything. That is why we have a mind. Even though the abusers attack on us to make our minds to go dumb, or the victim's mind to go dumb or numb, and are not able to give expression or really tell the situation that they are in. But if they cast their mind and look inwards, they will notice those places where they have been violated. And then they'll be able to begin to pick up the pieces and the fragments from there and begin to put one or two together. People are always ready to help them come out. Like if you look on the social media today, everybody is crying and saying, why didn't Osinachi speak out and all that? Everybody, is picking up guns and arrows. They want to fight. That's the truth. There are more people than we can imagine that are out there waiting for the victim to just speak out. So if you're listening to me and you are a victim of abuse, don't be afraid to speak out.
Yes.
I know you'll be thinking, what will people say? What will people say? You are ashamed. Exactly.
Yeah.
Many people have died untimely deaths because of what people say. I personally stayed back in that abusive marriage because of what people would say. I was ashamed to go back.
But it's your life.
It's your life. So don't think about what people will say. Be truthful to yourself. Face the reality. You're the only one who knows where the shoe pinches.
And nobody really cares about
Nobody
you.
really cares.
Nobody.
So you're going to damn what people will say. Ditch that fear completely. Don't be afraid of the stigma. If you leave the abusive marriage or relationship, people are going to say. If you continue staying there, people are going to say. And some of you victims listening to me, you might want to remain there because of your children. But that's another point. A lot of victims are afraid to leave because they are so attached to their children. They're like, my children. And I keep saying, don't stay because of your children. Leave because of them. Your children need you alive. They need you healthy. And it is unfair to subject your children to that chaotic environment. If you are there with the abuser, you will always fight. There will always be chaos. And that kind of situation is not healthy for the children.
Thank you so much for being here today.
It's been my pleasure so far.
Very insightful. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I believe you've learned a lot about abuse and domestic violence. It is better to be alive than to be in a wrong relationship or a wrong marriage, because a wrong relationship or a wrong marriage can even kill you, take your life, kill your productivity, and destroy you completely. So, it is possible to be whoever you want to be. Join us next week. Thank you.
Activating success with Love Idoko.